When we look at the Adrinka symbol of Sankofa from the Khan, we must look at it more than just art. The same way that when we go to Kemet and we look at the Meduneta and we look at these things, we must look at Sankofa the same way. When it comes to Sankofa, we see many African proverbs, we see many stories that is used for us to get a message in it, and this message being one to aid us of understanding where we are today so that we could make a better tomorrow. One of the proverbs most famously known is to go back and get it. To go back and get it, meaning to retrieve, meaning to look, meaning to search for the ways of the past, to aid and understand the present so that we could build a better future. To know your history is to know yourself. There's many things that say there is nothing new under the sun, that there's a time and season for everything. An even more famous quote would go and say, history is most rewarding in our research. If we know what has happened yesterday, then we can intelligently discuss today, because today is based on yesterday, just as tomorrow will be based on today. So when we see this symbolism of Sankofa, it is a bird with its neck looking back with an egg in its mouth. As we see this bird, we see the legs on the bird, the legs pointing forward on the ground, representing physical existence, physical knowledge, a knowledge of centered in the present. And with this physical knowledge, we understand this being our surroundings of society today. We understand this physical knowledge making up what they call evolution. But there's something that's happening. As the bird is looking behind, looking to the past, and it has an egg in its mouth, this egg represents life. It represents new beginnings. Anytime you think of the egg, you must also think of the egg of life, which we see in sacred geometry. This egg of life represents, I believe, in when the sperm and the egg is going through metamorphosis, a new beginning, growth. And as we see that egg in the mouth of the bird, that is the gift that it has gotten from its past. But also on this bird, we see wings. When we see wings, we know these wings are tools so that this bird can excel above the ground and into the air. So these wings represent a higher degree of knowledge, spiritual, if you will, something that's excelling over what we normally are into today. That higher knowledge, that spiritual knowledge would go to your morals. This would go to your principles. Furthermore, this even goes more to your spiritual, if I haven't already said it. So through the act of Sankofa, we know that that is basically telling us, out of all our getting to gain understanding. Through the forward motion, we are already doing the knowledge. Through the forward motion, we are already getting the essence of knowing about things. But usually in this journey that we live, if we forget our past, then truly, as it says, any person that does not study does not do history. Any person that does not study to show thyself approved. Any person that does not look to the past is only bound to repeat it. And usually with the past, there's mistakes. Usually with the past, there's lessons. Usually with the past, there are successes. So if we don't look to our mistakes, if we don't look to the success, how do we know what really successful moves are being made in this present time? How do we know if we're really planning and properly planning to make an advancement? Furthermore, when we look at Sankofa, this is the exact start of doing the knowledge. You reflect upon that knowledge. Then after you reflect upon that knowledge, you are gaining wisdom because you acted upon the knowledge. You got something out of that came to wisdom. And with that wisdom, you use that to gain understanding. This leads you to culture. As we see that the Sankofa is also knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, we understand through this there is a healing process. There's a reflective process as you reflect, as you reconcile, as you deal with what happened in your life using the law of complementary duality. You focus on that good, you focus on the bad, and you make the best of the situation that you are in by planning ahead. But when we look at history, what is the importance of history? John Henry Clark said that history is a reference tool. Paraphrasing now, history is a tool that you use as a way to scale your advancement. It is used to give you a reference, especially us who have been stripped of our history, especially us who have been stripped of our culture and have been stripped of our mores and folkways. We have to search back and we look at this history so we know what we have to restore to and also know what we have to outdo so that we don't go through it again. There's in the language of the Twa, there's I cannot say it. Forgive me for having African lips that speak an English language, but it is said it is not wrong to go back for that which you have forgotten. So we know that with this tool of Sankofa, it is a restoration. With this tool of Sankofa, it is a way to restore life, making it better despite the calamity and the chaos and the mismanagement of our time. Sankofa itself, I would furthermore say that it is even dialectical materialism before we see it branded. And I will say branded because it was not discovered, but before it was branded in the European world. In the year 1235, there would be a constitution of Mali that would be made. You could look it up according to the Epic of Sundiata. In this writing, you would go and look through how they made this constitution. And this constitution was made in them looking at using their oral traditions, using what had happened in the past, and using the mistakes that they made the previous years under different rulerships. They would go on and to redo the basis of civic duty. They would go on and redo the basis of how they treated each other, how they treated the workmen, the basis of how they would split up the clans, how they would split up who's tasked of the caste systems, who would be tasked to do such and such, who would be tasked to handle the things of the day-to-day society. If you would go to Article 4, they'd say the society is divided into age groups. Those born during a period of 3 years in succession belong to the same age group. The members of the intermediary class between the young and old people should be invited to take part in the making of important decisions concerning society. This is only one of various articles. It's over 40 articles in this Constitution. Again, that is the year was 12,035. It is the Constitution of ancient Mali. But again, going to this 3 different age groups, and as they use this middle age group to be that which would be the bearers of society, and to use them being in the middle of the youth, being in the middle of the elders, and those would be the ones to lead the day. If we kind of just look at it for what it is, using that out of the 3, using that sits in the middle, using that class of age group for them to be the rulers and not the elders who would already be there. And then after that middle class is the rulers, the ones behind them would inherit it. Each class is getting to see a transformation of each other. That is your past, your present, and your future. The elders being that of the past. And when we say past, this is not to demean elders. This is not to reduce them to a lesser grade of that which is the present. Again, as we know what the past is, it is a reference point for the present. It is a reference point for your future. And so when you see the present, the now, that which is now, that which is in its prime now, when you see that being used to guide the society, we understand that it's because at an age of time, when you're through the ages, you have the most energy when you're in that prime age of time. They say the mind is fully developed at 25. But yet we know at 25 that in this society, there are still things that we're going through. And the things that we're going through from that 25 to 35 year period, that is the most energy you will have. The most understanding of the past you will have. Through that time. After that, you get in your 40s and your 50s and 60s, time is leaving you. The energy is literally leaving you. The bones are getting weaker. You have to train more. The weight is dropping. The metabolism is changing. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is the course of life. Again, past, present, future. This is the course of life. And so in this span of time, everything gets its turn. And so as those that are in that prime stage, as they're making decisions, they go and get the advice from the elders who made the decisions in the past, and they use their advice as a reference point. They use their advice as a measure of what should be done now. They use that advice, not just advice, they get culture from them. They study ways of the old from them. They get more of their heritage from them. They get more of the values of old from them. And they get more of the traditions from them. And these are things to be preserved. They take the good. They take the bad. And as that future watches the present and the past interaction, the future grows up and inherits the ways from the present, just as the present inherited the ways of the past. And that future is taking the baton of life farther. The future is taking that baton of life and it's correcting, it's editing out the wrongs. As a proverb that our people would say is chewing the meat and spitting out the bones. But more than anything, we should say eating the fruit and spitting out the seeds and using those seeds to cultivate and make more of that which we already had. A famous quote from Kwame Ture says, if we can say anything about life and be absolutely correct, we can say that all things change. Everything changes. All the time it changes. And change is both permanent and constant. So furthermore, when we look into this, the way that progression happens, if progress stops, or more so speaking of Sankofa, you have the bird, but you also have the symbol of a heart shape. So let's look at that as a heart, as it is. If the heart is pumping, but the heart slows down, the progress is slow, the body is now having to work overtime to try to maintain the beat to catch it up. And if it goes into shock and something happens and all that energy is wasted, now the heartbeat stops, flatline, it's dead. So when we look at Sankofa, it is an ever-continuing process of still making the heartbeat, not heartbeat the same, but the heartbeat must beat better. The blood must flow faster. And it must be consistent and repetitive, just as revolution is consistent, repetitive, but it's ever-changing. With Sankofa, we gain resilience as we reflect, as we look at what we've been through, as we look at that two-sided argument, as Bobby Seale would say. You increase one thing and you decrease another. When you look at Sankofa, you're looking at, again, you're looking at dialectical materialism before it was coined. As we look at, to prove that, well, let's go into how we look at those three basic laws of dialectical materialism, the laws of interpretation of the opposites. Just study that one law when we look at the opposites. As we look through the past, and again, as I said before, you have mistakes. You have success. That is your experience. Then when you look at your materialism, the outlook when it goes to how humans view society and the impact that they leave to make on the world. That's your Sankofa. All in all. This is not in any way to disrespect those who would rather say dialectical materialism. This is not in a way to try to outdo what the Trotskys and the Marx and the Lenin have gave their definitions and observations of dialectical materialism. But again, Kwame always told us that if we think that dialectical materialism, scientific socialism, is a European thing, we are strongly confused. We must think as and look to the antiquities of Africa, knowing of what they contribute to math and science and the society and government, we must already know that these things we already had with us. And I yield.